Indiana CPS caseworkers placed this child back in an abusive home and never went back to check on him again. He was unalive within 6 months. The story of Judah Morgan, trigger warning. Judah was born June 17, 2017, to his parents, 21-year-old Mary Yoder and 23-year-old Alan Morgan. In the days before Judah was born, CPS had received complaints that Mary and Alan were abusing and neglecting their older child, who was 3 years old at the time. And they were known for their quick tempers. They didn't do well with children. So then when Judah was born, he was born with a large amount of THC in his system because Mary wouldn't stop smoking. Neither of them kept a stable job or home. So CPS took their older child and placed him with a maternal grandmother. And then they placed baby Judah with a cousin. And over the next 4 years, that cousin Gina and her husband Philip would raise Judah as their own. Judah was so intelligent. I mean, this was a smart child. He was talking by 1, potty trained by 2. He knew left from right by the time he was 18 months old. In their home, Judah was thriving. So Gina was required to take Judah to do home visits with his biological parents. Now, CPS told Gina and Philip they could adopt Judah and that this would be a permanent placement. The county's regional manager told Gina that they were going to be filing termination of parental rights 2 different times, once in 2019 and the other was 2020. But then all of a sudden, things began to change. And those home visits would soon turn into overnight visits. Gina didn't see the point in this if her and Philip were going to be adopting Judah. But there was absolutely nothing she could do about it because CPS was in control. Judah came back from one of these overnight visits and told Gina he witnessed Alan kicking his younger brother down the stairs and said that Alan had physically abused him as well. So Gina reported it to the caseworkers and she said, look, he's scared to go over there. But the caseworkers refused to listen to Gina and Judah, even though Judah could verbally tell caseworkers what he was witnessing in the home. So anytime Judah knew he was supposed to go stay with them, he started throwing fits and having crying spells. Now, because Judah threw a fit and didn't want to go stay at his biological parents' house, the judge mandated he be sent to live with his biological parents for a trial run. That judge and CPS gave him a death sentence. So in April of 2021, caseworkers snatched Judah from the only family he'd ever known. Now, this wasn't without a fight. Gina and Philip did everything they could to stop this from happening. As soon as he was placed back with them, Mary cut off all contact with Gina and Philip. You know, the people who'd been raising him for 4 years straight since he was born. So now Judah and his older brother were both sent back to live with them, and they'd had 2 more children as well. And the caseworkers didn't see anything wrong with that. Gina said she felt so guilty because Judah probably thought that she just didn't want him anymore, and that wasn't the case. She was fighting for him. Gina called CPS on a daily basis to check in on Judah, but CPS caseworkers wouldn't tell her anything. They wouldn't even answer her calls. CPS didn't answer her because they hadn't been back to check on the children, and they quickly closed Judah's case. Had CPS waited, they would have seen Alan's charges and removed Judah 2 months before he died. Trigger warning, the night Judah was found. It was November 11, 2021, 2:45 a.m. The LaPorte County Police Department received a 911 call from Mary Yoder. Mary said their 4-year-old son was unconscious and not breathing, and police officers were dispatched to the home. Then, just a few minutes later at 2:53 a.m., 911 received a second call from Mary Yoder saying that Alan had lost his temper and hurt the child. She was scared and didn't know what to do. Officer Michael Sweet was the first officer to arrive on the scene at 2:58 a.m. Immediately upon entering the home, police found a 4-year-old male lying inside of a bedroom. He was nude, covered in a blanket. He had bruises all over his little body, as well as bruises and other red marks on his face and neck. Officers began to work on Judah. They looked for a pulse but didn't find one. They also noted that the boy was cold to the touch, so he had been deceased for quite some time. An officer said he was emaciated, frail, and broken, the worst I'd ever seen. An officer said he was black and blue all over, like a human punching bag. Officers found 3 additional children left home alone, ages 7, 2, and 1. Because Mary and Alan fled the home and went on the run, leaving their small children at home alone with Judah's body. The remaining children were escorted to the hospital and police put out a bolo, be on the lookout for Mary and Alan. In the meantime, police began their investigation. What police found in that home was absolutely disgusting. There was strong clothes, trash, rotten food, and animal feces in every single room of that house. In the kitchen, police found a dog locked in a tiny cage, covered in feces, matted hair, bald spots. The dog was emaciated, nearly starved to death as well. So the medical examiner took Judah's body in for an autopsy, and what they found was just horrific. Judah's entire body was covered in bruises and injuries. There wasn't a part of his body that hadn't been hit. Judah died of blunt force trauma to his head, causing a massive subdural hematoma. basically a brain bleed as a result of the trauma to the head. Judah's body was covered from head to toe in bruises and injuries that were in various stages of healing. Some were fresh wounds, some were old wounds. Some of the older injuries had been rebroken or refractured from the continuous abuse. As police continued their investigation, they find surveillance footage in the home. Yes, these idiots have cameras in their house that recorded all of the abuse that these children suffered. Judah had been kicked, punched, slapped, choked, thrown, restrained, starved. Anything they could do to him, they did to him. On October the 6th, Mary was seen striking Judah and throwing him to the floor before repeatedly kicking him. October 7th, 2021, the surveillance footage showed Alan punched Judah at least 13 times that day and another 15 times the following day. It also showed Alan kicking and throwing Judah down the stairs. Remember when Judah told Gina he watched Alan kick his little brother down the stairs? Well, CPS and the judge should have listened to Judah because that's exactly what happened to him months later. The footage also showed Alan repeatedly punching Judah, holding him up by his neck and dropping him onto the floor. The family could be seen leaving the home while leaving Judah in the dark basement alone for days at a time. They had been wrapping Judah up in a blanket and taping it with duct tape, restraining him down in the basement for days at a time, in the nude with no food, water, or heat. They did this almost every day since they had gotten him back. If only the caseworkers would have come back and checked on him at least once. So finally, after being on the run for some time, the police catch up with Mary and Alan and they are arrested. Alan is charged with first-degree murder, 5 counts of neglect, and animal cruelty. And of course, Mary, like every other woman who chooses a predator over her children, she flips on Alan as soon as they pull up at the police station. Oh, she's a victim of domestic violence. She never put her hands on Judah or any of the other children. Alan was the aggressor. He was the abuser. She claimed she did her best to protect her children from Alan, but Alan was just so hot-tempered. He was such a monster. Mary lied to the police and put everything on Alan in an attempt to get herself a lighter sentence. Police also found internet searches that said how to perform CPR on a toddler. So September 2022, Alan pled guilty to charges of murder and battery in exchange for a guilty plea. They dropped the animal cruelty charges, and Alan was given a sentence of 70 years in prison. Now, initially, Mary had the balls to plead not guilty. I know, the audacity. However, in her most recent appearance, she pled guilty to felony neglect that resulted in death as well as domestic battery for incidents involving other children. Now, the judge in this case took the plea under consideration and has set a hearing for November 1st to decide whether to accept the plea or to carry out sentencing. We need for Mary to get a life sentence too. It was later revealed caseworkers had never returned to the home since bringing Judah back. Had caseworkers came back to this home one time and checked on these children, they would have found this horrific scene and they could have removed these kids and saved them. Now get this, Gina and her family tried to sue CPS, but the judge wouldn't allow it. I told y'all, lawmakers are corrupt and CPS workers always get immunity. The system was intentionally built that way so CPS caseworkers can't be held accountable. I want to leave off with remembering Judah. Judah was a comedian. He was so funny and he loved to dance. He loved to sing. Gina said he loved picking flowers like dandelions. She said he called me mommy and my husband daddy and my kids were his siblings. He was the sweetest, most loving child anyone could ask for.